Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Claudia Ali. I am a parent outreach coordinator at the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, also known as ISAC. Before I begin with this session, I want to mention that this is our first live session for parents, and I am really excited to share information with you all. So thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. These and future sessions will be shared on our YouTube page. And for questions you may have today, you can use the Q&A feature or the chat at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. I will try to answer as many questions as I can before I end this session. If for any reason I don't get to answer your question today, you can follow up with us via text message using our ISAC College Q&A. And if you give me a couple of seconds, I would like to share a link through the chat for you to look at it later. Bear with me. Okay, so this is a link where you can find updates regarding the 2024-25 federal process for requesting financial aid. This is where I am getting the information that I'm providing today. Okay, so for today's session, I'm going to be talking about some of the changes and updates regarding the FAFSA, which is the financial aid application that college and senior high school students complete every year. To begin, I want to share who we are. So the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, or ISAC, is the college access and financial aid agency here in the state of Illinois that administers scholarship, grant, and student loan repayment and forgiveness programs. And our mission is to provide Illinois students with information and assistance to help make education beyond high school accessible and affordable. I also want to share a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Claudia. I am a parent outreach coordinator, and I have been at ISAC since December of 2019, right before the pandemic. So similar to your children, I experienced the virtual world, working from home, but this actually opened new opportunities for us to inform those families who may not be able to attend in-person events, right? So before joining this agency, I worked in healthcare, and for many years I volunteered assisting the community, concentrating for the most part in the Spanish-speaking population in the Chicago area. I was born and raised in Mexico until the age of 18. I am a first generation college graduate with a degree in science and a minor in psychology. I have two boys, one who is in seventh grade and the other one is a senior high school student. As a parent of a high school student, I understand that this last year is very stressful for all of us, right? But especially for our students, since they have to concentrate in many different things at the same time, like searching for colleges, applying for colleges if they haven't done it before, writing essays, asking people for letters of recommendation, applying for financial aid, and still having to keep up with their grades and finish their senior year strong. Right. So I think that having empathy for them and learning as much as we can is something we parents can do to understand what they go through and support their needs, but not only through this process, but throughout their college years. And I know that we cannot do things for them now, now that they're reaching the age of young adults, right? But maybe we can direct them to the resources available through the school. I live here in Chicago, but my job is to support parents throughout the state. And so I am available in person, through email, phone call, or even to meet with you virtually. Now I want to transition to what this session is about. But I want to say that we are still learning about all of the new changes as they are released. So please be patient and stay tuned for future sessions. So hopefully this is not the only one. Hopefully we can provide this information in Spanish as well for those Spanish-speaking parents. So to get started, I just want to define financial aid and briefly talk about it before I get into the updates. So, financial aid is money that can be borrowed, given, or earned. And these funds are intended to make up the difference between what we can pay for college or what the actual college cost, right? So, this financial aid comes from different sources, such as federal programs, state programs, colleges, and universities. And there is also private sources of financial aid, such as private scholarships. If you are a parent of a senior high school student and this is your first time going through this process, you might be wondering, how does a student applies for financial aid? So to answer that question, all senior high school students and college students file the free application for federal student aid, or what is known as FAFSA. You probably hear about this term before. So the FAFSA, as well as the alternative application for qualified undocumented students, are the forms that the students use to apply for financial aid. And this is done every year. Is not a one-time application. So once the student is in their senior year, they apply for the first time and then continuously every year while they're in college and while they're requesting financial aid. So for the purposes of this session, I will talk about the FAFSA only, since there are no changes or updates with the alternative application. So by completing the FAFSA, the student may be eligible for grants from federal and or state programs. The student may also be eligible for the federal work-study program, student loans, and scholarships through colleges. Okay, so let's now move on to the changes and updates. That's what we are here, right? So to begin, I want to mention that every year the FAFSA application opens on October 1st, but this year this did not happen. So the application is expected to open sometime in December, and this is because the Department of Federal Student Aid is working on some changes to the application. However, we don't have a specific date yet, so please keep an eye on school notifications. The school counselor should notify the student when the application is ready for them to start applying. So let's talk about what your role as a parent will be for completing the FAFSA. A lot of times we ask ourselves why my information is needed for the FAFSA if the student is the one applying for financial aid, right? So for the purposes of the FAFSA, a student is dependent until the age of 24, and they will need your information. Parent information will be needed. Unless the student is married, then the student will be considered independent and your information will not be needed. This has always been this way. This has not changed. But previously, a dependent student completing the FAFSA would log in and complete all the sections included in the application. At the end of the application, the student would sign the FAFSA, and then the parent would sign the FAFSA as well. But now students and parents will each have a section to complete, okay? The student can only complete the student section, and parents can only complete the parent section. So we all have an assignment this time. So the students do their own part and we parents do our other portion of the application. So for this, the students will need to enter your name, your social security number, date of birth, and email to notify you to complete your section. Okay. You will need an email. I know some parents don't have one, so it's important to start creating that email now. And I want to point out that for these dependent students, if the parent section is not completed, they will not be able to submit the application. So please, 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 I cannot stress enough, do your part completing your section. And I am speaking for myself as well, because like I mentioned, I also have a senior high school student. Um, as if we complete our portion, the student can complete and submit their application as soon as possible. Again, like I mentioned, for dependent students, parent information will be needed. So for financial aid purposes, there are only three types of parents, and this has not changed. It is still going to be biological parents, adopted parents, and step parents, as long as they're married to a biological or adopted parent. If both parents, biological and adoptive, are unmarried but living together, information should be reported for both parents. Okay, that also has not been changed. However, what has changed is who is reported if the parents are divorced or separated. If this is the case, then the student is actually going to report the parent who provides the most financial support. Okay, in previous years, it was who the student lived with the most in the last 12 months. But now it will be who provides the most financial support for the student, regardless of who files the student in their taxes. Okay. For a student to complete the FAFSA electronically, both the student and a parent have to sign it using what is known as the Federal Student Aid or the FSA ID. Okay, if you're not familiar with the FSA ID, this is just an electronic signature. This is how the student logs into the form. This is how the student will sign the form, and the same thing for the parents, right? We also have to create one. So again, because of this, the student and the parent must each have their own FSA ID. And I want to note that only one parent will need an FSA ID unless the parents are married but filing taxes separately, or unmarried but living together. The FSA ID, excuse me, is used every year to sign the application. And if this is your first time that you and your child will be completing the FAFSA, I will suggest to save your login in a notebook or in a folder and have it accessible for the following year. Okay, so these will be needed every year as the student is applying for financial aid. Now, for those parents who had already created an FSA ID for another child, there is no need to create a new one. The same FSA ID can be used for both students. So there is no need to create a new one. The process for creating the FSA ID is pretty much the same. The new thing for this section is that the FSA ID must be created before the FAFSA can be started. So previously, the FSA ID could be created right before starting the FAFSA and move on with the FAFSA, but now FSA is encouraging to do it a couple of days before the student can start the application. And this is because it can take up to 3 days to get verified with Social Security. So if you and your child can work now, that would be great. I know that some schools are already providing workshops with your students to create their FSA ID. So you can either attend those workshops if they're available for parents, or you can ask your child to help you create one. The other thing that is new here is that parents who do not have a Social Security number will now be required to create an FSA ID. Previously, parents without a Social Security number were unable to do so, but now it will be required. So what was happening before, the student will sign the FAFSA electronically using their FSA ID, And then the parent without a social security number would print out the signature page. They will provide a wet signature, and then it was mailed out. But now, parents without a social security number, like I said, they will need their own FSA ID. Since the FSA ID is tied to the social security number, for those without a social security number, there will be similar TransUnion questions to verify the parent's identity. For example, have you lived in this address? Have you ever owned this car? Or have you ever had this loan with this particular bank? This type of questions will be used to verify your identity. And with that, you will be able to create your own FSA ID. We don't fully know what this process is going to look like exactly, but the process will be shared with all of us before the FAFSA is released. So one of the other things that is required to complete the financial aid application is to report the student's financial income. And for that, students would enter information from their family tax returns, right? So now there is a new process that has been developed for families to transfer their tax information into the FAFSA. So at the beginning of the application, everyone must provide authorization for their tax information to be shared by the Internal Revenue Service, or the IRS, with federal student aid, and this includes non-tax filers. So for this particular case, if a parent is not required to file taxes, the IRS will report that there is no tax return on file, and the student can continue the application. Okay. If there is no consent provided, the student will not be eligible for federal financial aid, even if the student would qualify for it. Okay. So it is very important to provide that consent. So I know this is a big piece that has been added to the application, but consent is going to be required. I cannot stress enough about this particular point. It will be required in order for the student to be considered for federal financial aid. Please keep all these things in mind. I know there are resources who can help in this process, either your school counselors or resources through us are available. Don't hesitate to ask. I know this is a very difficult process. Like I mentioned at the beginning, not only for the students, but for us as well. Now we are going to be trying to help the students complete this application, and we have to do our part, to do our best to for them to be able to access these resources. So this is all I have for today's session. I know if this is your first time experiencing this process, it could be a lot, and I didn't want to overwhelm you with a lot of information. There are certainly more changes and updates, but since today's session is our first one, I didn't want to give you too much for today. So if you have questions, you can put it in the chat, and I will try to go over as much as I can. So let me see if I get questions here. And I apologize because my so let's see. I have a question. Can we have more than one student apply for FAFSA? I have a senior in high school and going to be a senior in college. So yes, more than one student can apply for financial aid. So basically, if there is 1, 2, 3 students, they all the 3 of them can apply for financial aid through the FAFSA. My contact information, I will be sharing it in the chat box as well. So give me a second so I don't forget. Um, so I am putting my information right now. Like I said, I can be reached via email, phone call. I am also going to provide information for our ISAC College Q&A that I mentioned at the beginning. So through there, you or your students simply text your first and last name, and then we can start a conversation through there. Okay, so sorry, bear with me. I am by myself here. Okay, so the number for English speaking parents and students is 847-243-6470. And there is also a Spanish line for whoever prefers to speak Spanish, is the 773-823-0570. Let me see if I can get another question. So I am a parent with a student loan. Will that be a problem? So no. The fact that you, the parent, have a student loan, there is no problem because the student will be applying for their own financial aid. So absolutely no problem that you, the parent, have a student loan. So I heard that you will have. So I heard that now you will have to document if you own a small business and have rental property. So yes, um, if you own a rental property, you would have to report that. Um, if you live, let's say, a three flat, but you live on the first one and there is family living on the second and third, you don't have to report it. But if it is someone else, then yes, you would have to report that. Okay, so the question is, where do you go to get the FSA ID? And the link was provided. So that would be studenta.gov / FSA ID / sign in. So the other question is, do existing college students now need to create an FSA ID? So existing college students who had already applied for financial aid, they should have an FSA ID already. So there is no need to create a new one. Okay. So the question about reporting the small businesses, yes, it needs to be reported. We don't have complete information on that question. So I would suggest to stay tuned for future sessions. I know, like I said, once everything is released, the counselors, us, we will have that information to provide you. So, like I said, the ISAC College Q&A service, it's a free service for you and your students to ask questions. So you simply text us your first and last name, And then the first like couple of messages are automated, but then we come in to answer your questions. So just so you know that there is no like robot behind the screen. So it's us answering those text messages. I, in particular, answer the Spanish line. And so any text messages getting between, office hours, I will reply right away. But then if the text message comes after 4:30 p.m., I will answer to those questions the next business days. And the same thing applies with the weekends. Okay, is there any other questions? Like I said, if you can't think of questions right now, I know this is a lot. It's a lot for me, even, doing what I do. This is my first time. I have a senior high school student, and it's going to be hard once the application is ready. Mm. So there is another question about parents needing an FSA ID. So yes, the at least one of the parents need to have one. Um, so another question. So I created an ID for myself 4 years ago. For my daughter, can I use that one for another child's app? Sorry, I'm trying to read while the screen moves up and down. So I believe the same FSA ID that you created as a student can be used to sign your daughter's application. And I apologize, some of the questions are getting answered in the chat as well. So So I can't see any new questions. I apologize. Like I said, there are questions being answered through the chat. I apologize if I didn't get to answer your question, but like I said, I am available at any time if you'd like to contact me directly or you want to use the Q&A, you can do that. And I hope you guys can join us hopefully soon. Like I said, we are trying to provide a Spanish session for the Spanish speaking parents, and then provide more of these sessions for you. I know the parent participation and engagement in our children education is important. So I would like to thank you for joining us tonight. And this is about to end. We had until 7. But again, I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. And hopefully we'll see you soon. Thank you.